Soundstripe.
Welcome everyone to this special Halloween video, where you get to see me in costume. What do you think? I'm
Soundstripe.
quite fond of the Plague Doctor motif. Now, in this video, it's a bit of a D&D story time, where I will explain to you, unfortunately with minimum visuals, the story of how I
Soundstripe.
ran a Halloween game, and some fun I learned along the way. You see, I've been running a private game for some in real life friends, and I've been having
Soundstripe.
quite a bit of joy seeing them go through my game. Of course, part of the fun in D&D is seeing how unexpected things go. For this campaign that
Soundstripe.
roughly utilizes the Spelljammer setting, I created a great villain known as Harbinger, the Bringer of Doom. They're obviously, as a D&D monster, they're overdramatic and have a penchant for the dramatics. And I've had quite a bit of fun getting into both the voice of the character and trying to sell their menace. Of course, this is D&D, which has people getting to enjoy the game as if it was Skyrim or Gary's Mod. Literally anything goes in a Dungeons and Dragons game. So, what does a DM like myself to do about it? Well, I suppose I could try to force a reaction by doing what I think would be scary, but I didn't do that this session. You see, since I decided I only get to do this probably once, and I won't get to do it again if not for a very, very long time, I chose to put a pause on the main story and proceed with a fun little Halloween-esque romp. I even had some fun with the gang meeting the Scooby-Doo characters. And we even had a chuckle of me using all of their catchphrases. You know, zoinks, jeepers, jinkies, frick. Yes, it's that kind of get table. Oh, and of course, what the ranger, who had a cute little wyvern pet dog throughout most of the session, had suddenly gained the ability to speak, but a lot of their consonants got replaced with an R. Reese Raggy, it reads rear and rumble. Row. Honestly, I was just enjoying myself because, again, I get to do this once. I'm gonna have fun. So, I decided to have a little bit of fun and introduce the villain earlier than anticipated. So, I brought them down, Harbinger, a terrible menace, and they had to deal with its horror. I did nerf the stats somewhat, so it was even remotely fair. However, what came out was not what I anticipated. You see, before the session started, I was nervous. This creature has extremely high bonuses, high damage output, a lot of health, resistances, and means to mess with high-level players. That's the point. It's a challenge, after all. But if you're only level 11, that's not a challenge, that's just a TPK. And that's not fun to get just wiped out without a chance to fight, even if I did take the totals down. But you have to remember, this is D&D, and D&D never is balanced. What do I mean by that? Well, the players had a lot of success simply by stealing his hat! And then the rogue who stole his hat just ran around the battlefield. He wanted his hat back desperately because it was funnier to have him try and chase it around. But then the aforementioned wyvern dog got involved. You see, regardless of the size difference, if a creature is grappled, its movement speed is a 0. which means it can't move unless it's no longer grappled. It could deal with this slightly, in the sense that Harbinger has the power to teleport, and also can grab enemies and throw them, which I used. But while these inconveniences threw Harbinger through a tumble, the other players were able to play around some of its abilities. For example, the cleric involved was getting a couple hits in, and actually managed to do quite a bit of damage with an inflict wound spell. Meanwhile, the rogue, at one point, the one time the Harbinger got to use a weapon I am very proud of, a unique rapier that does bonus elemental damage that follows the Chaos Bolt logic. Perhaps if there's enough demand, I might go into more details of Harbinger's stats. But what you need to understand is I was building this thing to be very much a big challenge for the end of the game. So, of course, one person gets skewered with a rapier. Okay, that hurts. Maybe they'll find a way around it. The rogue asks me if they can use sleight of hand to take the rapier out of their hand and just run away with it. I thought about it. I thought very hard about it. And then I told him to roll. And I rolled an opposing strength check. And the rogue won. So, without his hat, without his sword, Harbinger is just chasing this rogue around. They even use their legendary actions just to bellow this cacophony of terrifying force. Doesn't work. They even use as much movement as they can around to get behind the rogue, casting Evar's black tentacles to try and snatch them up. But the rogue just keeps evading. It gets very cute. I personally found this hilarious going on. After all, it's hard not to find the humor when a character is... when this massive threat to the multiverse is lit... Let me give you the context here, so you can understand. I built Harbinger to be a massive threat. A danger to the multiverse itself. Should Harbinger take your planet into notice, the gods leave you for dead. And here he is running around going, "Give me my head back! Give me my head back!" Now, I did pull a bit of a... I don't know how to... I did, however... They won by technicality, in the sense of they annoyed themselves into winning. You see, Harbinger is based off the Illithid. So, when mentioned of how low hit points the rogue was, when Harbinger finally caught up for the second time, his first instinct was to grab the rogue, pull them in close, and I asked to confirm their hit points, and explained that they have a grappling ability that if you are below 50 HP, if the target is below 50 HP, they must succeed an intelligence save or be stunned. You can imagine what happens next. Next, this id-like horror wrapped its tentacles around the rogue's brain and devoured its... I then describe how they woke up in some sort of pit full of other souls crying out in agony. I'm going to give you this line without context. When established that the big bad villain could still hear the rogue's jabs, he turns to the cleric and says, "Please pass me the sheet full of dad jokes." They have been making these terrible puns all game, and I was running a motif that every time they do it, they could hear the undead around them that were being controlled by Harbinger give out a collective because Harbinger is psychic, so it hates puns.
Soundstripe.
The cleric wanted to use the command spell, telling it, regurgitate! Regurgitate!
Soundstripe.
Unfortunately, there was a back and forth of whether or not that would be successful. Harbinger has legendary resistances and proficiency in wisdom saves. However, the cleric mentioned that they have more spells, they have a lot of spell slots, and they seem to be able to just ring around the rosy and avoid Harbinger's attacks. And we were close to the end of the session. So, I decided to go for a little bit of humor. Harbinger glaring at the last member of the party and says, if you want your friend Batso back, spits up the brain it devoured into its hands, then you can have it, and throws the brain at the cleric's chest. Then, just to rub a little bit of salt in the wound, I asked the cleric, what is your total hit points currently? They answer, around 60. Alright then, a single finger is pointed at the cleric. He utters but a single word, power word kill. They wake up, scarred, but alive, and they can remember. They remember the battle, but it seems they somehow survived. Now, what was the lesson I learned from this? Honestly, your villain doesn't actually have to scare the players. I would argue that the characters might be scared in their own sense, but the players don't have to be. I would love a Critical Role style game where everyone is just as invested in the roleplay as I am, being a former theater child. But not everyone needs to have that kind of dramatic emotion to enjoy the game. Honestly, a good D&D game could just be a couple of people laughing and chuckling as the big bad evil guy demands he get his hat back. Because that you wouldn't have something like that in a video game. Or if you did, it would feel very artificial. But since these are real player choices, it feels more enjoyable than overcoming a ridiculously hard boss battle. So, I suppose what I've learned is there is a joy to be had when you tune into what your players enjoy. And the more in line yourself and your party will have, the more fun you can have. This is coming from someone who's very much a planner DM. Well, I'm actually a mixed. I like to improv things for the fun, but I like to have a plan to go ahead. And I've seen the results of that. If I lean too much on my improvisation, I will sometimes flounder about a bit. But if I'm too planned ahead, then I find I just end up in a position where I don't want to railroad the players, but I haven't taken player action into account. But it's important to remember D&D is about having fun. And from what I could tell from the game, my players got to have fun that day. And I got to have fun with them. And that is literally the best thing you can do in D&D. So then, I bid you all a Merry Hallows Eve. Enjoy some candy, enjoy some spooks. Now if you excuse me, I have trick-or-treaters.